Alright, today we're going to be analyzing this poem. Hope is the thing with feathers, and let's just dive straight into it. Alright, let's start with the first line of the poem, which is the exact same as the title. Now, the line is a metaphor, of course. However, we're not going to be focusing on that. We're going to be focusing on the hope right here, which is in quotation marks. Now, why is hope in quotation marks? Well, we need to understand Emily Dickinson before we can actually do any analyzing here. Now, Emily Dickinson wasn't very well known for her time, and she wasn't exactly outgoing, very introverted. Didn't do a lot of traveling, none of that stuff. And the fun fact, she didn't actually publish a lot of her poems. Her sister found 1,800 of her poems after her death and published most of them. So yeah, that really tells you a lot. Emily Dickinson wasn't very outgoing, wasn't exactly too crazy about poetry. A lot of sources say she was a very like a literary hermit genius. However, she had her own poetry style, which was well, one of the part of that poetry style is to emphasize words by doing things like capitalizing them, mostly nouns. And now, why does she do this? To emphasize their meaning. Like this word right here, which we'll get to in later on. Now, how does this connect with the quotation marks here? Okay, she's doing the exact same thing here with hope. Okay, she is modifying the word hope here to make it special, to make it like to emphasize the meaning here. So what's the meaning? Okay, so the meaning here is she's trying to personify hope, give it like an identity. Okay, show how abstract the idea of hope actually is in this poem, so that the reader can have a better understanding of the hope in this poem here, which we'll get to later on, and you'll see more of it and more of how she perceives hope in this poem. Alright, with that out of the way, we can actually move on to the rest of the poem. Now, the first line here, like I said before, this is a metaphor. It's talking about how hope is the thing with feathers. So it's comparing hope to something with feathers. Guess what? Guess what? Also has feathers. That's right. It's a bird. Alright, it's a bird. Let me just draw a bird. There you go. It's not a bird. It's a bird. Trust me. Uh. Now, how do we know it's a bird, you may ask? Because there's so many things with feathers either way. The way we know is because on the line right below it, right here, that perches in the soul. Guess what also perches? A bird. The hope is the bird that's perching in the soul with feathers. And there's even more evidence later on, but we'll look at that, of course, later. Now we know this is comparing hope to a bird with feathers, but what does this mean? That perches in the soul. So hope is perching in the soul. This means that hope is a core part of the human body. Why? Because it's on the soul, and a soul is as core part of a human as possible. Man, oh man, I really can't draw. There you go. So it's talking about how hope is a bird that can perch in the soul and is a core part of us being human. Now, the next line here, we go into and sings the tunes without the words. This is talking about how hope is singing. Yeah, that's right. The word sing here means is singing. But yeah, in all seriousness though, what this means right here is that hope is essentially singing into our ear and giving us optimistic thoughts, essentially. It's perched in our soul, and now it's just singing along with us, giving us optimistic thoughts and all of that. And of course, the last line of the first stanza, and never stops at all. This means it means that the hope will keep on doing this. Yeah, hope will always sing the song was perched in our soul. It all makes sense, all right? So hope is the thing with feathers, comparing it to a bird, and it perches in the soul. It's a core part of us being human. It sings the tunes without the words. It's singing into our ear, encouraging us, and it constantly does this. Alright, moving on to the second stanza. Here we have an interesting line. And sweetest, and the gale is heard. Now, you might be wondering what the hell gale is. Gale is just an old-fashioned way of saying storm. Alright, that's all gale is. However, it's not actually used that way. It's gale as a word, it means storm, but it's used as a metaphor for a hard time. So I can say I'm in the gale right now, and that would well make sense because this poem is actually written in I think 1860 something, which means that it's older than The Simpsons, Joe Biden, and the Soviet Union. But yeah, either way, so what does this line all mean? Well, it means and sweetest. So and sweetest, and the storm is heard. Okay. Either way, and sweetest, and the gale is heard. It means that hope is very sweet, and then when it's and even when you're in the hard time of life, when you're in the gale, when you're having a hard time when you're in the gale, you can still hear hope just because of how sweet it is. Okay, and next we have and sore must be the storm. Now, sore here is not the feeling you get after cutting up another copy of Marrow Thieves. Sore here actually means, yeah, what sore means here, sore means things like difficulty or hardship. So I can say like I'm this task is a sore right now, and that would make sense. So that's what the sore is used here. So sore must be the storm. So sore here means difficulty or intensity. So what does this all mean put together? So sore must be the storm. This means that the storm has to be very intense. Now, why does the storm have to be very intense? It links up all the way down here. That could abash the little bird. And guess what? Bird hope, it all connects together. All right, bird, sweetest, and then the. Well, give me a second. Just ignore that. Yeah, there goes sings, and then purchase hope. So yeah, so the storm has to be they're very intense to abash to beat the little bird that kept so many warm. Another just very easy metaphor here that kept so many people hopeful. But yeah, so storm must be the storm that lashed little bird that kept so many warm. And then we needed a very intense storm. Another storm is just like the same as gale, a lot of hardship in life, to beat the living hell out of hope, and that kept so many hopeful. All right, we're on the last stanza now. So last stanza right here, it does a bit of a break off from what we have up here. Starts with I've heard it in the chillest land, and that this is of course connected with this line right here, and on the strangest sea. So she's talking, the Emily Dickinson here, she's talking about how she can hear hope in the chillest land and on the strangest sea. So it's covering both land and sea, showing that hope is like everywhere, no matter where you are. And these are describing like how these are just to tell us like these are different, just to show how different the terrain can be, and you can still hear hope. And then we move on down here to this line, yet never in extremity. Now, extremity here is capitalized, so we know this is an important word. Now, what does extremity mean? Or extremity means like the highest amount of something. So I can say there is the amount of pigs in this pen now are at its extremity. Highest highest value, highest amount. So yet never in extremity. So never in its highest amount it asks from a me. Now that's not what it actually means here. Never in extremity. What the thing that's the highest amount right here is the work that Hope is doing. She's talking about how Hope at its highest value, its highest amount, no, it only asks for a crumb of the person receiving the work. So Hope, doing all of this work at its highest value, only asks for a crumb of you, for a crumb of you to believe in it. So this is talking about how Hope does its absolute best, its extremity, and it only asks for a crumb in return. So let's zoom out a bit here. So let's just recap on what we've done. So it starts, hope is the thing with feathers. It compares hope to something with feathers. Then it perches in the soul. It talks about how it's a core part of being human that's in our soul. It sings the tunes without the words. Hope is singing along with us, singing in our ear, never stops at all. It constantly does this. Hope is sweet and you can hear it in a storm no matter how hard. And it takes a very intense storm to bash hope away. And hope is always keeping so many warm. However, even though hope has been bashed away, you can still hear it. No, even in the chillest land on the strangest sea, no matter where you are, you can hear hope. And hope is always doing its hardest work. Its work is at its extremity, and all it asks is for a crumb of you. Overall, I enjoy reading this poem. It's very meaningful. It describes hope in a way that, well, it describes hope in ways that like I never thought was possible. And yeah, that's about it. See ya. Okay, let's start with the first line of the poem right here. Not a line, which is the exact same as the metaphor, as the title. Well, shit, I fucked it up.